Hey, it's Freiburger, and I'm about to show you a sample episode of a show that we do on MotorTrendOnDemand.com that's called Roadkill Extra. It shows up every single weekday. It's got stuff like outtakes from shows, behind-the-scenes stuff, tech tips, you name it. You can see them all with a free trial at MotorTrendOnDemand.com. Hey, it's Freiburger here. I'm wandering around in Alana's palatial garage here, and what do I find but the Thermoquad? Okay, why is this relevant? Let's go back to Roadkill history. Remember the episode where we first built the General Mayhem, and Mike and I were in that motorhome that we bought, and I had my feet up on the dash, and we're cruising the thing on the highway with a 440 right between us, and he floors it, and the carburetor goes, "Boo!" And I said, Thermoquad, the only carburetor that punishes you for wide open throttle. And for whatever reason, that became like, I don't know, a quote to repeat. People really dug it. But I found that a lot of fans don't know what a Thermoquad actually is. Well, it is a 4-barrel carburetor. Let's go back. This is made by Carter Carburetors. Carter started in like the early 1900s. I'm going to say 1909, something like that. And they made carburetors for Ford and for Jeep. And they developed their own line of carburetors as well, and in fact, were the very first American company to make a 4-barrel carburetor for a Buick. And they went on to produce all sorts of stuff, the AFB, which is an aluminum 4-barrel, the AVS, which means air valve secondary. Those two carburetors are still in, an iteration sold and produced by Edelbrock. And what's interesting is that those Edelbrock carburetors, if you look at them, they actually say Weber on them, like a Weber carburetor logo. That's because Carter also made Webers for a while. And as a matter of fact, this is something a lot of people don't know. Carter even made Rochester quadrajets, Rochester being one of their competitors, but Rochester made carburetors for GM, and they couldn't produce enough of them, and so sometimes Carter had to make them also. Now that comes back to the Thermoquad because this is very much in operation like a Rochester quadrajet, mostly because it shares the same footprint, and it's what's called a spread bore carburetor. It has a tiny primary throttles, and it has large secondaries. The secondaries on all Thermoquads are 2¼ inch, and the primaries change depending on whether it's for a small block or a big block, or if it's an aftermarket version, the competition series of the Thermoquad, it depends on whether it would have been the 850 CFM unit or the 1000 CFM unit. Now, these things were used on Chrysler Corporation cars from 1971 to about 1984, 85. The 71 340 was the first car to use one of these. And after that, actually, Carter went out of business after 1985. But these were used on not only those 340s, but also on 400s, motorhomes, 440s, all kinds of different stuff. And you can differentiate the OE ones from the aftermarket ones, because the aftermarket competition series Thermoquad has a mechanical choke on it. The rest of them do not. And actually, the ones that were used in OE applications have a whole bunch of smog stuff on them as well, so that's an identifier. But why is it called a Thermoquad? Let's get down to that. This part right here. See this black part? That was called a phenolic resin, a space-age polymer. It's essentially plastic. It has an aluminum housing up here and aluminum base plate on it, but this was said to lower the temperatures of the fuel in the bowl in here by, I don't know what they claimed, 5 to 20 degrees or something like that. The problem with them is that they tended to warp, and people didn't really understand them, and they tended to break them, and these things got kind of a bad rap. The greatest thing about them is when you floor them, they make the same sound as those Rochester quadrajets, that boo kind of sound. And I think the reason for that is that it uses this variable airflow valve here in the secondary, just like a quadrajet, so that you could use this carburetor on a variety of different engines, and it would only flow as much air as was demanded by this secondary door. So it's actually a mechanical secondary carburetor in the sense that when you open the linkage like this, it opens the butterflies, but this door only flows open depending on how much airflow is going into the engine, which is of course determined by displacement and RPM and power and things like that. So now you know, that is a small history of the Carter Thermoquad carburetor, Steve Dulcich's favorite. Better leave that right where I found it and never install it on a car. If you need more Roadkill Extra, go sign up right now.